The rain pounded against the windows of my studio apartment, each drop a tiny hammer striking glass in a chaotic rhythm that matched my racing heart. I huddled on my worn couch, a threadbare blanket pulled tight around my shoulders, as if it could somehow shield me from the disaster my life had become. The pregnancy test lay on the coffee table, 2 pink lines that had appeared just this morning, transforming my world in an instant. Twins, Dr. Weaver had said, her voice echoing in my memory. Congratulations, Ms. Collins. Congratulations, as if bringing 2 lives into this world alone, abandoned and broke, was something to celebrate. I reached for my phone with trembling fingers. The screen's harsh light illuminated my tear-stained face in the darkening room. I needed to tell him. James deserved to know, even if he'd disappeared 3 weeks ago after cleaning out our joint account. Money I'd saved for 2 years working double shifts at the restaurant. Money that was supposed to be our fresh start. My thumb hovered over the message field. What do you say to the man who'd whispered promises of forever, then vanished with everything you had? The father of your unborn children who'd left nothing but a hollow note. Sorry, Emma. I can't do this anymore, James. I'm pregnant, with twins. We need to talk. I typed the words, my vision blurring with fresh tears. Simple, direct. A desperate plea from a woman who had no one else to turn to in this sprawling, indifferent city. I pressed send before I could lose my courage, watching the message disappear with a soft whoosh that felt far too insignificant for words that carried the weight of 3 lives. The response came almost immediately, making my heart leap into my throat. Who is this? I blinked at the screen. Had he deleted my number so quickly? Erased me that completely? It's Emma. Please don't pretend you don't know me. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. My stomach twisted with dread. I think you have the wrong number. I checked the contact. James Wilson. The number I'd called 100 times before. But then I noticed it. The last digit was different. In my emotional state, my trembling fingers had tapped a 7 instead of a 4. A simple mistake with catastrophic timing. I'm so sorry, I wrote quickly. Wrong number. Please ignore. But the stranger responded again. Are you okay? The unexpected concern made a fresh sob catch in my throat. No, I wasn't okay. I was pregnant with twins, abandoned, and now I was bothering some random person with my problems. I was about to respond when another text appeared. Where are you? A chill ran through me. Why would you need to know that? You're in distress. Pregnant. Alone. I want to help. Something about the authoritative tone made my skin prickle. I don't need help from a stranger. I'll be fine. No one who is fine texts the wrong number about twins at 11 p.m. during a thunderstorm. I hadn't even noticed the time. The storm had grown worse, thunder now accompanying the relentless rain. I jumped as a particularly loud crack shook the windows. Please, I insist. Where are you? I shouldn't answer. Every instinct told me to put down the phone, block the number, and figure this out on my own. But exhaustion weighed on me like a physical burden. I hadn't eaten properly in days. The restaurant had cut my hours. The rent was due in a week. And now, twins. I'm fine, really. Just having a bad day. I tried to end the conversation. Emma, I don't believe that. Tell me your address. My blood froze. I hadn't given this person my name. How do you know my name? The reply was immediate. You said it yourself. Now your address. I won't ask again. Had I? My mind raced through our brief exchange. Maybe I had. Everything was a blur of panic and hormones and fear. I'm calling the police. I typed, though my hands shook so badly I could barely hold the phone. That would be unwise. I'm only trying to help. But if you prefer handling this yourself, I understand. Good luck with your twins. The dismissal stung more than it should have. Even a stranger's concern being withdrawn felt like another abandonment. I placed the phone face down on the table and buried my face in my hands. What was I going to do? In my pocket, I had exactly $27.16. In my bank account, nothing. James had taken everything. A knock at the door made me jolt upright. No one ever visited me. I lived in the kind of building where neighbors avoided eye contact in the hallway. "Who is it?" I called, my voice cracking. Silence. I approached cautiously, peering through the peephole. The hallway appeared empty, but something dark shifted at the edge of my limited view. My heart hammered against my ribs. "I know someone's there. I'm calling the police." "Ms. Collins." The voice was deep, smooth, with the faintest accent I couldn't place. "I believe you have something to discuss." Ice flooded my veins. "Who are you?" "Someone who can help with your situation." I pressed my back against the door, as if my slight frame could somehow barricade it. "I didn't tell you where I live." A soft chuckle filtered through the wood. "You didn't need to. Please leave, or I really will call the police. The police won't help you find James Wilson. I can." The name hit me like a physical blow. "How do you—" "Open the door, Ms. Collins. I don't enjoy speaking through wood." Against every rational thought, my hand moved to the chain. What if this man really could help me find James? What if he knew something? The desperation of my situation clouded my judgment. I slid the chain free and turned the lock, opening the door just enough to peer through the crack. The man standing in my hallway was nothing like I'd imagined. Tall, impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than 6 months of my rent, with dark hair swept back from a face that belonged on a magazine cover. But it was his eyes that held me, cold, calculating, assessing me with the intensity of a predator. He wasn't alone. Further down the hall stood another man, broad-shouldered and watchful, his hand resting inside his jacket in a way that made my stomach clench with instinctive fear. "May I come in?" the suited man asked, though it wasn't really a question. "Who are you?" I managed to whisper. His lips curved in what might have been a smile on anyone else. On him, it looked dangerous. "My name is Alexei Volkov, and you, Emma Collins, have made quite an interesting mistake tonight." The name meant nothing to me, but something in his tone made my skin prickle with warning. I began to close the door. "I think you should go." His hand shot out, palm flat against the wood, stopping my movement with effortless strength. "That would be unwise, Emma, especially in your condition. How did you find me? How do you know about James?" "I know many things, including the fact that the man who abandoned you is not who you think he is." He pushed the door open wider, and I found myself stepping back, allowing him entry despite every alarm bell ringing in my head. Alexei Volkov stepped into my tiny apartment, his presence immediately filling the space, making it feel smaller, suffocating. His gaze swept over the shabby furniture, the dripping ceiling corner, the pregnancy test still lying on the coffee table. Something flickered in his expression. Disgust? Pity? I couldn't tell. "You live here?" he asked, though he clearly knew the answer. I lifted my chin, a flicker of pride cutting through my fear. Not all of us can afford designer suits. His eyes returned to me, and that almost smile appeared again. "No, not all of us can." He moved further into the room, touching nothing, but examining everything. "James Wilson. That's not his real name, you know." My heart sputtered. "What?" "The man you knew as James Wilson is actually Dmitry Sokolov. He worked for me." Alexei turned to face me fully. "Until he stole from me, just as he stole from you." The room seemed to tilt around me. "I don't understand." "It's quite simple, Emma. Dmitry took something that belongs to me, something very valuable. And now I find that he's left something valuable behind as well." His gaze dropped pointedly to my still flat stomach. I wrapped my arms protectively around my middle. "You've made a mistake. I don't know any Dmitry. James was a bartender. We met at the Rivera Club." "Yes, I know. A club I own, incidentally. He was placed there for a purpose. Meeting you was not part of that purpose." The implications of his words sank in slowly, horror spreading through me like ice water. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying, Emma Collins, that the father of your children is a thief and a liar who has disappeared with something that will get him killed when I find him." Alexei approached me, and I backed away until I hit the wall. He reached out, and I flinched. But his fingers merely tucked a strand of hair behind my ear with surprising gentleness. "And I will find him. What do you want from me?" I whispered, tears threatening again. For now? To keep you safe? Safe from what? His expression darkened. From the people who will use you to get to him. From the people who would harm those children to settle a score. His hand moved to my cheek, thumb brushing away a tear I hadn't realized had fallen. You're coming with me, Emma. Tonight. No, I'm not. The words came out stronger than I felt. I don't know who you are or what you want. But I'm not going anywhere with you. Alexei stepped back, straightening his already immaculate suit. Let me be clear. This is not a request. There are people, dangerous people, who know about Dimitri's connection to you. It's only a matter of time before they come looking, hoping you can lead them to him or serve as leverage. His voice softened, almost gentle. And they will not care that you are carrying twins. As if to punctuate his warning, a flash of lightning illuminated the room, followed by a deafening crack of thunder. The ancient building's lights flickered once, twice, and then went out, plunging us into darkness. I felt rather than saw Alexei move closer, his expensive cologne, sandalwood and something spicier, enveloping me. His hand found mine in the darkness, warm and steady. Time to go, Emma, he murmured, his lips close to my ear. Pack what you need. Quickly. In the pitch black of my apartment, with rain lashing the windows and a dangerous stranger holding my hand, I made a decision that would change everything. I nodded, though he couldn't see it. 5 minutes, I said, my voice barely audible over the storm. His fingers tightened around mine. I'll be right here. I didn't know then what I was walking into. I didn't know that this mistake, a wrong number on a desperate night, would lead me into a world of power, danger, and obsession I could never have imagined. I didn't know that Alexei Volkov would become both my protector and my captor, or that the twins growing inside me would bind us together in ways that would prove inescapable. I only knew that in that moment, in the dark, I had nowhere else to go. I awoke in a room that wasn't mine, wrapped in sheets that felt like liquid silk against my skin. For a moment, I floated in that hazy space between dreams and consciousness, before reality crashed back, the pregnancy test, the wrong number, Alexei Volkov appearing at my door. Bolting upright, I found myself in a bedroom larger than my entire apartment. Sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking what appeared to be a private garden. The bed I occupied was enormous, with a headboard of dark carved wood that climbed nearly to the ceiling. The walls were a soft gray, adorned with minimalist artwork that probably cost more than I made in a year. Good morning, Ms. Collins. I jumped at the voice, clutching the duvet to my chest. A woman stood by the doorway, middle-aged, with her dark hair pulled into a severe bun, wearing what looked like a uniform of some kind. Where am I? My voice came out raspy with sleep and fear. Mr. Volkov's residence. She moved to a side table and poured water from a crystal decanter. I'm Mrs. Petrova, the housekeeper. Mr. Volkov instructed me to see to your needs. I accepted the water with trembling hands, suddenly aware of my parched throat. How did I get here? The last thing I remember is being in the car and feeling dizzy. You fell asleep during the journey. Mr. Volkov carried you in. Her expression revealed nothing about how she felt about this arrangement. There are clothes for you in the closet. Once you're dressed, breakfast will be served downstairs. Mr. Volkov is expecting you. Before I could ask anything else, she exited, closing the heavy door behind her with a soft click that somehow felt final. I slipped out of bed, noticing I was wearing an oversized silk nightgown that wasn't mine. The thought of Alexei, or someone else, changing my clothes while I was unconscious made my skin crawl. I hurried to the adjoining bathroom, a marble palace with a shower large enough for 5 people, and a freestanding tub that looked like it belonged in a luxury spa. Catching my reflection in the mirror, I barely recognized myself. My normally unruly brown hair hung limp around my pale face. Dark circles shadowed my eyes. I looked exactly like what I was. A terrified pregnant woman in a stranger's house. After a quick shower that I couldn't help but indulge in, hot water had been inconsistent at best in my apartment, I wrapped myself in a plush towel and investigated the closet Mrs. Petrova had mentioned. It was a walk-in space larger than my bedroom, filled with clothing that couldn't possibly belong to Alexei. Women's clothing, in my size, brand new, with tags still attached. Dresses, jeans, blouses, even lingerie, all exactly my measurements. Cold dread settled in my stomach. This had been planned, prepared. But how long ago? How long had I been watched before last night's text? I selected the simplest items I could find, jeans and a cream-colored sweater, and dressed quickly. No matter how beautiful the clothes or how luxurious the room, I was still a prisoner here. I needed to think clearly, to find a way out. My phone was nowhere to be found. I tried the bedroom door, half expecting it to be locked, but it opened into a wide hallway, with polished hardwood floors and more expensive artwork. The house was silent, except for the faint ticking of a grandfather clock somewhere nearby. Following the scent of coffee, I made my way downstairs, my footsteps muffled by thick carpeting on the spiral staircase. The house, mansion really, seemed designed to intimidate. Soaring ceilings, antique furniture that looked museum-worthy, crystal chandeliers that caught the morning light and scattered it like diamonds across the walls. Old money, old power, nothing like the world I came from. I followed the hallway to an open dining room where Alexei Volkov sat at the head of a table long enough to seat 20. He was reading something on a tablet, a coffee cup at his elbow, looking as impeccable as he had the night before in a different but equally expensive suit. Sunlight through the windows caught the angles of his face, highlighting cheekbones that could cut glass and the faint shadow of stubble along his jaw. He looked up as I entered, those cold eyes assessing me with an intensity that made me want to disappear into the floor. "Emma," he said, setting aside his tablet. "Join me." It wasn't an invitation, but a command. I approached cautiously, taking a seat 2 chairs away from him, keeping distance between us. "Sleep well?" he asked, signaling to someone behind me. "Where's my phone?" A hint of a smile touched his lips. "Good morning to you too." Mrs. Petrova appeared at my elbow, setting down a plate of what looked like the most elaborate breakfast I'd ever seen: poached eggs on avocado toast, fresh berries, something that might have been smoked salmon. My stomach growled traitorously. "Eat," Alexei said. "The babies need nourishment." The casual way he referred to my pregnancy, as if he had any right to comment on it, sparked anger through my fear. I want my phone, and then I want to leave. Alexei sipped his coffee, regarding me over the rim. "That's not possible right now. You can't keep me here against my will. That's kidnapping." "Is it kidnapping when I'm saving your life?" He set down his cup with deliberate precision. "You have no idea what kind of danger you're in, Emma." "The man you knew as James, Dmitri," I corrected automatically, then hated myself for it. Something like approval flickered in his eyes. "Yes, Dmitri. He's crossed very dangerous people. People who would think nothing of using you to draw him out." He gestured to my still flat stomach. "Using them." I placed a protective hand over my abdomen. "What did he take from you?" "Nothing that concerns you. It concerns me if it's the reason I've been abducted." Alexei's expression darkened. "You haven't been abducted. You've been placed under protection." "Protection I never asked for." "Sometimes, Emma, we need things we don't know to ask for." His voice softened fractionally. "Eat your breakfast. We'll discuss the arrangements afterward." Arrangements. As if this were some kind of business transaction. But my body betrayed me again, reminding me I was eating for 3 now. I picked up my fork and took a bite of the food, trying not to show how desperately hungry I was. Alexei watched me eat with unsettling intensity, as if cataloging each bite. When I'd cleaned half the plate, he spoke again. "You'll stay here until the situation is resolved. You'll want for nothing. The east wing of the house will be yours. You can use the gardens, the library, the pool. Mrs. Petrova will see to your daily needs. Dr. Myers will come weekly to monitor your pregnancy." I set down my fork. "And if I refuse, you won't. You don't know me. I know enough." He leaned forward slightly. "I know you're 26 years old. I know you've worked at the Gilded Spoon restaurant for 3 years. I know your parents died when you were 19, leaving you alone with substantial medical debt that you're still paying off. I know you met Dmitri Sokolov 6 months ago and believed all the lies he told you." His gaze pinned me to my chair. I know you have no one and nowhere to go, Emma. No family. No close friends. No one who would notice if you disappeared. Each word felt like a slap. How do you know all this? It's my business to know things. What are you? Some kind of gangster? The word made him smile. A cold, amused thing. How American. No, Emma. I'm a businessman with diverse interests. Businessmen don't kidnap pregnant women. This one does, when necessary. He stood abruptly, buttoning his suit jacket. Finish your breakfast. Mrs. Petrova will show you around. I have meetings today, but I'll be back for dinner. We can continue this discussion then. I won't be here, I said, though we both knew it was an empty threat. He approached my chair, and I tensed as he bent down, his lips close to my ear. Yes, you will. Because despite your brave words, you know there's nowhere safer for you and those babies right now. His hand brushed over my hair in what might have been a caress from anyone else. From him, it felt like being marked. One more thing, he said, straightening. There's a panic button in every room. Press it if you need anything, or if you feel unwell. With that, he left, his expensive shoes silent on the polished floor. I heard murmured conversation in the hallway, then the more distant sound of a door closing. I abandoned the rest of my breakfast and ran to the nearest window. The grounds outside were expansive. Manicured lawns, gardens, a glimpse of what might be a pool house in the distance. And surrounding it all, a high stone wall topped with what looked suspiciously like security cameras and motion sensors. Beyond the wall, dense trees obscured any view of neighboring properties or roads. I was in a beautiful prison with no idea where it was located. Mrs. Petrova found me still staring out the window. Would you like to see the rest of your quarters now, Ms. Collins? My quarters, I repeated hollowly. How long has he been planning this? Her expression remained impassive. Mr. Volkov is a man who prepares for contingencies. Was I just a contingency then? A way to get to James, Dmitri, whatever his name is? Something flashed across her face. Pity, perhaps. Mr. Volkov's reasons are his own. But if he wanted to use you as bait, you wouldn't be here in the family wing. You'd be elsewhere, under very different circumstances. The implication sent a chill through me. Who is he? Really? Mrs. Petrova's gaze met mine directly for the first time. A man it's better to have as a friend than an enemy. Now, shall we continue? The tour confirmed what I'd suspected. The East Wing was essentially a luxurious apartment within the larger house. Bedroom, sitting room, a small kitchenette, even a home office with bookshelves filled with classics and contemporary fiction. Everything I could need, except freedom. There were no locks on the doors leading to the rest of the house, but security cameras monitored every hallway, every entrance and exit. 2 men in dark suits patrolled the grounds visible from my windows. Not guards for my protection, I realized, but to keep me contained. You'll find your belongings have been brought from your apartment, Mrs. Petrova said, as we returned to the bedroom. She opened a drawer to reveal my pitifully few possessions, some clothes, my worn paperback of Jane Eyre, the small wooden box that contained my mother's wedding ring. He had people go through my things? The violation struck deeper than I expected. Mr. Volkov is thorough. She paused at the door. Lunch will be at 1. Is there anything specific you'd prefer? I stared at her, incredulous. My freedom? That isn't within my authority to grant. Her voice softened marginally. Ms. Collins, may I offer some advice? I nodded, desperate for any information that might help me. Mr. Volkov is protective of what he considers his. It would be unwise to test his patience. She hesitated. But he is not cruel without purpose. If you cooperate, this arrangement will be more comfortable for everyone. What he considers his, I echoed. I don't belong to him. The children you carry have his blood. In his world, that makes them, and by extension you, his responsibility. She stepped into the hallway. Rest now. The first trimester is often difficult. She closed the door, leaving me alone with her words echoing in my head. His blood. The implications hit me with the force of a physical blow. If Alexei Volkov was saying what I thought he was saying, I sank onto the edge of the bed, my hand instinctively covering my abdomen. Was it possible? Had James, Dmitri been related to Alexei somehow? A brother? A son? Or was there an even more disturbing possibility? I remembered Dimitri's reluctance to discuss his family, the mysterious phone calls he'd taken in another room, the unexplained cash he sometimes had despite our financial struggles. Had he been working for Alexei all along? Had our relationship been some kind of cover? My mind spun with questions as I paced the room, searching for anything that might serve as a weapon or a way out. But the windows were clearly reinforced, the decorative items too flimsy to be effective. Even the bathroom held nothing more dangerous than moisturizer. By evening, I'd explored every inch of my gilded cage, finding nothing that would help me escape. When Mrs. Petrova returned to escort me to dinner, I was no closer to understanding my situation or finding a way out of it. All I knew was that Alexei Volkov considered my unborn children his in some way, and that realization terrified me more than anything else. Dinner with Alexei Volkov was a study in controlled power. He sat opposite me at a smaller, more intimate table than the morning's monstrosity, candlelight casting shadows across the sharp planes of his face. Between us, a feast had been laid out. Roasted meats, vegetables and sauces that smelled of herbs and butter, bread still steaming from the oven. A glass of deep red wine sat by his plate. Beside mine, sparkling water with a twist of lemon. He'd changed from his business suit into something more casual, though casual for him still meant tailored black pants and a charcoal shirt that probably cost more than my monthly rent. The sleeves were rolled up to reveal strong forearms marked with what appeared to be faded scars. His dark hair was slightly disheveled, as if he'd run his hands through it repeatedly. It made him look almost human. "You haven't eaten much today," he said, breaking the silence that had stretched between us since I'd been escorted in. "Mrs. Petrova tells me you refused lunch." I wasn't hungry. A lie. I'd been ravenous, but too stubborn and frightened to accept more of his hospitality. "The babies need nourishment," he repeated his earlier statement, serving food onto my plate without asking what I wanted. Especially in the first trimester, I watched him cut into his steak, his movements precise and elegant. "Why am I here, Mr. Volkov?" "Alexei," he corrected, not looking up. "And I've told you. Protection. From what, exactly? Because right now you seem like the biggest threat to my well-being." His knife paused mid-cut. "If I were a threat to you, Emma, we wouldn't be having this conversation over dinner." The casual menace in his tone sent a chill down my spine. That's not reassuring. It wasn't meant to be. He set down his utensils and leaned back, studying me. "Dmitri Sokolov stole from me. Not money, though he took that too. Something much more valuable, and what does that have to do with me? Nothing. And everything." He took a sip of wine. "Tell me how you met him." I pushed food around my plate, trying to ignore how delicious it smelled. "Why should I tell you anything? Because I'm asking nicely, this time." The implicit threat hung in the air between us. I took a deep breath. "We met at the Rivera Club. I was there with friends. A birthday celebration. He was bartending. He was—" I trailed off, remembering. "Charming," Alexei supplied. "Attentive. Made you feel special. Like you were the only woman in the room." The accuracy of his description stung. "Yes." "And he moved quickly, didn't he? Always urgent. Always intense." I nodded, uncomfortable with how precisely he was mapping the trajectory of my whirlwind relationship with James. "Dmitri, within a month he'd moved into your apartment. Started talking about the future. Children, perhaps?" His eyes flicked to my stomach. "No," I whispered. "The pregnancy was unexpected. For you, perhaps." Something cold glittered in his eyes. "Not for him." "What do you mean?" Alexei took another sip of wine, considering me over the rim of his glass. "Did he ever take your phone? Use it to send messages?" The question caught me off guard. Yes, sometimes. When his battery was low. Why? And he always insisted on a specific method of birth control? One he provided? Heat rushed to my face. "That's none of your business." "It's precisely my business." He set down his glass with deliberate care. "Dmitri wasn't bartending at my club by accident, Emma. He was working for me, watching someone I needed information on. Then he disappeared 3 weeks ago, taking sensitive data and a considerable amount of money. But that's not all he took, is it? My appetite had completely vanished, replaced by a sick feeling in the pit of my stomach. I don't understand what you're saying. I think you do. Alexei's voice was softer now, almost gentle. The timing is too perfect. The birth control that mysteriously failed. The urgency with which he pursued you. Your pregnancy, confirmed just as he vanishes with what he stole from me. You think he got me pregnant on purpose? The words felt ridiculous coming out of my mouth. I know he did. Alexei's certainty was terrifying. What better insurance policy, what better leverage against me than my own flesh and blood? The room seemed to tilt around me. What are you saying? Dmitri is my half-brother, Emma. Those twins you're carrying are my niece and nephew, my family, my blood. The revelation struck like a physical blow. I pushed back from the table, nearly toppling my chair. No, that's not... He never said anything about a brother. Of course he didn't. Alexei's smile was bitter. Dmitri has spent his entire life in my shadow, resenting what he sees as his birthright denied. He gestured to the opulent room around us. All of this, he believes, should be half his. He spent years trying to prove himself worthy, and when that failed, he resorted to theft and treachery. My head was spinning. James, Dmitri, had told me he was an only child, raised by a single mother in Boston. Had everything been a lie? You're making this up, I said. But doubt had already taken root. Why should I believe you? You shouldn't. Not without proof. Alexei stood and withdrew something from his pocket. A phone. My phone. He unlocked it with ease, another violation, and pulled up a photo gallery I'd never seen before, hidden in a secure folder. Look. He placed the phone in front of me. On the screen was a photo of two boys, one a teenager, the other much younger. Despite the age gap, their resemblance was unmistakable. The same jaw, the same dark eyes. The older boy had his arm around the younger one's shoulders, his expression protective and fond. I swiped through more photos. The boys growing older, the resemblance between them and the man across from me growing more pronounced. The last photo showed Alexei as I recognized him now, standing beside a younger man I instantly recognized as James. As Dmitri, they were both in suits, glasses of champagne in their hands. But while Alexei's expression was neutral, Dmitri's held something darker, his smile not reaching his eyes. This was taken 6 months ago, Alexei said quietly, 2 weeks before he was assigned to the Rivera Club. 2 weeks before he met you. I set the phone down with trembling hands. Why would he do this? Use me like this? Because you were perfect, Emma. Alone in the world, struggling financially, no family to ask questions. No close friends to interfere, and his eyes met mine, something almost like sympathy in them. And genuinely kind, the sort of woman who would make a good mother to his ready-made family, the sort of woman I might hesitate to harm. Is that what this is about? You think he used me as what? A surrogate? A shield? Both. Alexei returned to his seat. Dmitri knows I would never harm an innocent woman carrying Volkov heirs. He knows family is everything to me. By ensuring you became pregnant, he created the perfect leverage. My own blood, my family's future, tied to someone I cannot touch. And now you're using me too, I said bitterly, keeping me prisoner to draw him back. No. The firmness in his voice surprised me. If I wanted to use you as bait, I would have made a public spectacle of your capture. I would have ensured word reached him that I had you. Instead, I've hidden you away where no one, not Dmitri, not our enemies, no one, can find you. Why? What do you gain by keeping me here? Alexei's expression softened fractionally. Those children are Volkovs. Whatever Dmitri has done, they are innocent. They deserve protection, and they deserve to be born into their rightful legacy. They're not things to be claimed. Anger cut through my fear. They're my children. They're our family, he corrected. Yours and mine. Whatever Dmitri intended, that is the reality now. I pushed my plate away, nausea rising in my throat. And what happens after they're born? You keep us all prisoner forever? This isn't a prison, Emma. It's sanctuary. He gestured around the opulent dining room. You'll want for nothing here. The children will have every advantage, every opportunity, except freedom. Freedom is overrated when compared to safety. His tone had hardened again, especially for a single mother with twins and no support system. The brutal truth of his words stung. Even if I could escape, where would I go? How would I support 2 babies on a waitress's salary? How would I afford childcare, medical expenses, everything they would need? As if reading my thoughts, Alexei continued, I'm offering you security, Emma. A home for you and your children, the finest education, the best medical care, a future without struggle. In exchange for what? His eyes traveled over my face, lingering on my lips before meeting my gaze again. Your cooperation, your discretion, your loyalty. Something in the way he said it made my skin prickle. And if I refuse, you won't. There was that certainty again, because you're smart enough to recognize a good deal when it's offered, and because you already care for those babies. You want what's best for them. Being raised in a criminal enterprise is best for them? A flash of anger crossed his face. Is that what you think this is? Some crude mob operation? He gestured sharply at our surroundings. I am a businessman, Emma. My family has interests in shipping, real estate, technology. Legitimate enterprises built over generations. Legitimate businesses don't involve kidnapping. When necessary, they do. He leaned forward, his voice dropping. The world you think you live in, the world of laws and rules and fairness. That's a comforting fiction for most people. But there's another world beneath it. A world where power and connection determine everything. Dmitri dragged you into that world the moment he decided to use you. I'm just ensuring you have the protection you need to survive in it. I wanted to argue, to deny everything he was saying. But exhaustion was overtaking me, the emotional toll of the day catching up with my physically taxed body. Alexei must have noticed, because his tone softened. Eat something, Emma. Just a little. Then you can rest. To my surprise, I found myself complying, taking small bites of the now cool food. It was still delicious, but tasted like ashes in my mouth as I contemplated my situation. Why did you bring me here yourself? I asked after a while. Why not send one of your men? Alexei considered me for a long moment. Because I wanted to see you, to understand what Dmitri saw in you that made you his choice. And what did you conclude? Something shifted in his expression, a heat entering his eyes that made me suddenly, acutely aware of him as a man, not just a threat, that my brother's taste has improved. The comment hung in the air between us, charged with something I didn't want to examine too closely. I pushed back from the table, needing to escape his gaze. I'd like to go back to my room now. Alexei stood immediately. Of course, you need your rest. Instead of summoning Mrs. Petrova, he escorted me himself, his hand hovering near the small of my back without quite touching me. The walk through the massive house was silent, broken only by the distant ticking of clocks and the soft pad of our footsteps on thick carpets. At my door, he paused. You'll adjust to this situation, Emma. Most people are more adaptable than they believe. Is that supposed to be comforting? It's merely the truth. He reached out, hesitated, then brushed his knuckles lightly against my cheek. Sleep well. I pulled away from his touch, retreating into my room. Good night, Mr. Volkov. Alexei, he corrected again, something like amusement flickering in his eyes before he turned away. We're family now, after all. The door closed behind him, and I was alone again in my luxurious prison, with more questions than answers, and the disturbing realization that the man who had kidnapped me, the uncle of my unborn children, was looking at me with more than familial interest. I lay awake long into the night, my hands protectively cradling my still flat stomach, wondering how my life had spiraled so completely out of control from one mistaken text message. And wondering, too, if Dmitri had ever loved me at all, or if I had only ever been a pawn in a game between brothers. When sleep finally came, I dreamed of 2 dark-eyed boys playing in a garden, their laughter turning to screams as shadows engulfed them. I woke with tears on my face, and the word twins on my lips, a premonition of history repeating itself that I was powerless to prevent. Days bled into weeks in my golden captivity. The East Wing became familiar territory. The sunlight that streamed through the windows at precisely 9 each morning, the way the wooden floors creaked near the bookshelf, the pattern of security guards rotating shifts outside. I'd mapped every inch of my allowed space, tested every boundary. There was no way out. The cameras watched constantly. The grounds beyond my windows were patrolled day and night. The few times I'd attempted to explore beyond the boundaries Alexei had set, a guard or Mrs. Petrova materialized as if from nowhere, gently but firmly steering me back to safe areas. My body was changing, my pregnancy becoming more obvious as the weeks passed. The morning sickness that had plagued me in my apartment continued, but now I vomited into marble basins instead of the cracked porcelain of my old bathroom. Dr. Myers came weekly as promised. A stern woman with gentle hands who monitored the twins with state-of-the-art equipment brought to the house. "They're developing perfectly," she'd assured me at my last appointment. "Strong heartbeats, good size for 12 weeks. 12 weeks. I had been in Alexei Volkov's mansion for nearly a month. He was an inconsistent presence, sometimes absent for days on business, sometimes appearing at odd hours to check on me. He joined me for dinner most evenings when he was home, our conversations a strange dance of probing questions and careful answers. He wanted to know everything about me, my childhood, my parents, my hopes before life had derailed them. I found myself answering despite my initial resistance, starved for conversation that wasn't with staff who reported everything back to him. In turn, I learned little about him beyond what he chose to reveal. That he had taken over the family business at 22 when his father died. That he spoke 5 languages fluently. That he preferred Bach to Mozart and Scotch to vodka, despite his Russian heritage. He never spoke of his mother or of Dmitri beyond that first night's revelations. It was a strange half-life, cushioned by luxury but hollow at its core. That particular morning, I woke feeling more nauseated than usual. The twins were making their presence known with a vengeance. I barely made it to the bathroom before emptying my stomach, clinging to the toilet as wave after wave of sickness washed over me. "Emma?" Alexei's voice came from the bedroom doorway, unexpected and unwelcome. I hadn't heard him come in. He was supposed to be away on business until the weekend. I tried to answer but could only retch again, humiliation burning through me at being seen like this. Cool hands gathered my hair back from my face. A damp cloth pressed against the back of my neck. Alexei knelt beside me on the bathroom floor, his expensive suit incongruous against the domestic scene. "Deep breaths," he murmured, his hand rubbing small circles on my back. "It will pass." When the sickness finally subsided, he helped me to my feet, supporting me as my legs trembled with weakness. Without a word, he led me back to the bed, pulling back the covers for me to slip between the sheets. "I'll have Mrs. Petrova bring ginger tea and dry toast," he said, his voice gentler than I'd ever heard it. It helped my mother when she carried Dmitri. The casual mention of his mother, the first I'd heard, caught my attention. "Your mother?" A shadow passed over his face. "Yes, she suffered terribly with him, much worse than with me," she said. He sat on the edge of the bed, uncharacteristically hesitant. This close, I could see the faint lines around his eyes, the shadow of stubble on his jaw. He looked tired, more human than the cold, controlled man I'd come to know. "You were away," I said, trying to ignore the intimacy of him sitting on my bed while I lay in my nightgown. "Business trip. I returned early. Dr. Myers called me." Fear spiked through me. "Why? Is something wrong with the babies?" No. His hand moved as if to touch me, then withdrew. "She was concerned about your emotional state. She says you seem withdrawn, depressed." "I wonder why," I said bitterly. "Could it be because I'm a prisoner? A protected guest," he corrected, the familiar argument resurfacing. "A guest can leave." Alexei sighed, running a hand through his hair in a gesture that reminded me, uncomfortably, of Dmitri. "Emma, I'm trying to keep you safe, to keep them safe." "From what? It's been a month, and you still haven't told me what exactly I'm being protected from, who these mysterious enemies are." Something hardened in his expression. "You don't need to know the details. I think I do, if they're supposedly threatening my life." He stood abruptly, moving to the window to look out over the grounds. "My family has rivals, people who would use any weakness, any vulnerability to gain advantage. Dmitri knew this when he made you pregnant. He knew they would see you as leverage." "Against you?" "Yes." His back was to me, shoulders rigid beneath his tailored suit. The Volkov name carries weight, power, responsibility. There are those who would do anything to diminish that power. I pushed myself up against the headboard, fighting another wave of nausea. So I'm not just Dimitri's leverage against you. I'm potential leverage for anyone against you. He turned, his expression unreadable. Yes. And that's why I can never leave, because the great Alexei Volkov can't have a vulnerability walking around in the world. A muscle ticked in his jaw. It's more complicated than that. Explain it to me, then. His eyes met mine, something almost vulnerable in them. I can't. The admission seemed to cost him something. In the month I'd known him, Alexei Volkov had never admitted inability of any kind. Can't or won't. Both. He moved back to the bed, sitting closer this time. Emma, I need you to trust that I'm doing what's necessary. For all of us. Trust? I laughed, the sound hollow. You've given me no reason to trust you. Haven't I? His voice dropped lower. You're safe here, cared for. The babies want for nothing. We're still prisoners. You're still alive. His tone hardened, which might not be the case if you were elsewhere. We stared at each other, the familiar impasse stretching between us. But something was different this time, an intensity in his gaze that hadn't been there before, a tension in the air that made my skin prickle. You remind me of her, he said abruptly. Who? My mother. She had the same, he gestured vaguely, stubborn dignity, the same fire. I didn't know how to respond to that. In all our conversations, he'd never made such a personal observation. What happened to her? I asked cautiously. Pain flickered across his face, so raw it startled me. She died when I was 20. I'm sorry. He nodded, accepting my condolence with surprising grace. It was a long time ago. And your father? You said he died when you were 22. Car accident. His expression closed off, or so it seemed. The implication hung in the air between us. You think it wasn't an accident. I know it wasn't. He stood again, his momentary openness gone, which is why I take threats to my family very seriously, Emma, including Dimitri, despite his betrayal. Is that what I am now? Family? His eyes traveled over me, lingering on the slight curve of my stomach visible beneath the bedsheet. You're carrying Volkov heirs. That makes you family, whether you wish it or not. And what does family mean to Alexei Volkov? Locked rooms and armed guards. Protection, he said firmly. Security, loyalty. And if I don't want to be part of your family? Something dangerous flickered in his eyes. That's not a choice either of us has anymore. Before I could respond, there was a knock at the door. Mrs. Petrova entered with a tray bearing ginger tea and toast as promised, her expression revealing nothing about finding her employer sitting on my bed. Thank you, Mrs. Petrova, Alexei said, rising. Please ensure Miss Collins eats something. Yes, Mr. Volkov, her eyes flicked between us, assessing. Will you be joining Miss Collins for dinner tonight? Yes. He glanced back at me. We have more to discuss. After he left, Mrs. Petrova helped me sit up and arranged the tray across my lap. The tea will help with the nausea, she said, her tone warmer than usual. Small sips. I did as instructed, the ginger soothing my roiling stomach. Mrs. Petrova, how long have you worked for Mr. Volkov? She paused in straightening my bed covers. Since he was a boy. I worked for his father before him, so you knew his mother. Something softened in her stern face. Yes, a remarkable woman. Alexei said I remind him of her. Mrs. Petrova's hand stilled. Did he? She studied my face with new interest. That is significant. Why? She seemed to debate with herself before answering. Mr. Volkov doesn't speak of his mother, to anyone. Not since her death. How did she die? Really? Mrs. Petrova's lips thinned. That is not for me to say. Please. I touched her arm, surprising both of us with the gesture. I need to understand what's happening, why I'm here. She glanced toward the door, then back at me. Mr. Volkov Sr. was not a kind man, she said quietly. Not to his wife, not to his sons. When he discovered his wife's indiscretion with another man, resulting in Dmitri, he became cruel. More than cruel. I remembered the photo of the young Alexei with his arm around his little half-brother, protective even then. He hurt them. Yes. Her voice had dropped to a whisper. When Mr. Alexei was 20, his mother fell down the stairs, allegedly. Brain hemorrhage, later, she was dead. Horror crept through me. His father murdered her? Nothing was ever proven. Mrs. Petrova's expression had closed again. 2 years later, Mr. Volkov Sr. died in a car accident. The brakes failed on a mountain road. The implication was clear. Alexei. Mrs. Petrova straightened, her professional demeanor returning. As I said, it is not my place to speculate. But Mr. Volkov has never spoken of his mother to anyone in my hearing. Until you. She busied herself around the room, tidying things that didn't need tidying. The twins were confirmed yesterday, she said, changing the subject. A boy and a girl. Dr. Myers told Mr. Volkov after your ultrasound. The news should have thrilled me. My babies, a son and daughter. But it felt distant, as if happening to someone else. He didn't tell me. Perhaps he wanted you to hear it from the doctor. She paused at the door. Rest now. I'll return for the tray later. After she left, I sipped the cooling tea, my mind racing with new information. Alexei Volkov, who had lost his mother to his father's cruelty and possibly avenged her death. Alexei, who had protected his half-brother even knowing he was the product of his mother's affair. Alexei, who now held me captive to protect the next generation of Volkovs. I placed my hand on my stomach, feeling the slight curve that housed my son and daughter. Whatever Dmitri's intentions had been in getting me pregnant, these children were mine, and somehow, inexplicably, they were becoming Alexei's too, not just through blood, but through his fierce determination to protect them. What did that mean for me? The question haunted me through the day as I rested, the morning sickness gradually subsiding. By evening, I was able to dress and make my way downstairs for the promised dinner, finding Alexei already waiting in what I now thought of as our dining room. He stood when I entered, his eyes taking in my appearance with that intensity that never failed to unsettle me. I'd chosen a simple dress from the wardrobe he'd provided, deep blue, flowing over my changing body without emphasizing it. You look better, he said, pulling out my chair. The tea helped. I sat, allowing him this small courtesy. Thank you. He took his seat opposite me, watching as I spread my napkin across my lap with deliberate care. You had questions for Mrs. Petrova today. Of course he knew. The house probably had listening devices as well as cameras. Yes. About my mother. I met his gaze steadily. Yes. What did she tell you? That your father was cruel. That your mother died suspiciously. That 2 years later, so did he. Something dangerous flickered in Alexei's eyes. She shouldn't have spoken of family matters. If I'm family, as you claim, then they're my matters too. His lips curved in a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Clever, Emma. Using my own words against me. I'm not using anything against you. I'm trying to understand. Understand what? You. I leaned forward slightly. Why this matters so much to you. Why I'm here, really. Alexei was silent as the first course was served. Some kind of soup that smelled of herbs and cream. Only when the server had departed did he speak again. My father was a monster, he said quietly. What Mrs. Petrova told you barely scratches the surface. When he discovered my mother's affair, he made all of our lives hell. But he reserved a special cruelty for Dmitri, a child who had committed no sin except being born. I listened, barely touching my soup, afraid that any interruption would close this rare window into his thoughts. I protected Dmitri as much as I could, took beatings meant for him, hid him when my father was in his rages. Alexei's face was impassive, but I could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his hand tightened around his spoon. When my mother died, when he killed her, I swore 2 things, that he would pay for what he'd done, and that I would never allow anyone to harm my family again. So, you killed him, I said softly. Alexei's eyes met mine, cold and hard. Yes. The The simple admission sent a chill through me. Not because I doubted it. I had suspected as much from Mrs. Petrova's hints, but because of the matter-of-fact way he confessed to patricide. "And now Dmitri has betrayed you," I said. "Used me to create leverage against you." "Yes." "What will you do to him when you find him?" Something flickered in Alexei's expression. Pain, regret, anger. I couldn't tell which. "I don't know." It was the second time today he'd admitted uncertainty, and it unsettled me more than his confession of murder. Autumn transformed the gardens into a tapestry of red and gold, visible from my windows as I entered my 4th month of captivity. My body had changed dramatically. The twins now an unmistakable bump that pressed against the silken maternity clothes Alexei had provided. The morning sickness had finally subsided, replaced by an energy I'd nearly forgotten I could feel. Dr. Myers had declared both babies perfectly healthy at my last exam. "Your son is particularly active," she'd noted, showing me the ultrasound image of my little boy. His profile so clear I could make out the curve of his nose. Beside him, my daughter floated serenely, as if already the calmer of the two. Twins often develop distinct personalities even in the womb. I'd cried, seeing them, not just from hormones, but from the complicated tangle of emotions their existence evoked. Joy and fear, love and uncertainty. They were mine, regardless of how they came to be, but they were also living reminders of Dmitri's manipulation and Alexei's obsessive protection. Alexei had been there for the ultrasound, standing silently in the corner of the room, his expression unreadable as he watched the screen. Afterward, he'd approached cautiously, as if afraid I might shatter, and asked if I'd thought of names. Not yet. I'd lied. The truth was, I'd been collecting names in a journal Mrs. Petrova had given me, testing them out in whispered conversations with my bump late at night. But those names felt private, a small rebellion against Alexei's assumption of control over every aspect of our lives. Our strange half-life had settled into routines. Dinner together most evenings when he was home. Carefully navigated conversations that grew incrementally more personal each time. The occasional brush of his hand against mine when passing dishes, lingering a heartbeat too long to be accidental. His eyes following me with that intense focus that still sent shivers down my spine, but different shivers now, edged with something I didn't want to examine too closely. That morning, I was restless. The confinement that had once felt suffocating had become merely constraining. My golden cage growing more familiar but no less a prison. I wandered the permitted areas of the house, trailing my fingers along bookshelves and banisters, seeking distraction. I found Alexei in his study, a room I rarely entered by unspoken agreement. The door was ajar, and I hesitated on the threshold, watching him work. He sat behind an imposing desk, phone pressed to his ear, speaking rapid-fire Russian to someone on the other end. His voice was cold, commanding, nothing like the carefully modulated tones he used with me. He looked up, sensing my presence, and his expression shifted subtly. "I'll call you back," he said in English, setting down the phone. "Emma, is everything all right?" "Fine." I stepped into the room, drawn to the floor-to-ceiling bookshelves that lined one wall. I was just walking, thinking. He watched me move around the space, his gaze tracking my every step. About? The future. I ran my fingers along the spines of leather-bound volumes. What happens after they're born? The question had been hovering between us for weeks, unasked and unanswered. Alexei's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "You'll remain here, where it's safe. Forever?" I turned to face him fully. "That's not a life, Alexei. Not for me, not for them." He rose from his chair, coming around the desk to stand closer. In the months of my captivity, something had shifted between us. The fear I'd initially felt had transformed into something more complex. Not trust, exactly, but understanding. I'd come to recognize the man beneath the cold exterior, the shaped-by trauma boy who had grown into this obsessively protective force. "What would you suggest?" he asked, his voice softer than I expected. "That I let you leave? Take the children somewhere I can't protect you? I suggest you find a middle ground." I rested a hand on my rounded belly. "They'll need more than safety, Alexei. They'll need freedom." normalcy, other children to play with, school someday, all of which can be provided here, in a fortress. I shook my head. That's not living. That's existing. His expression darkened. Better existing than dead. Is that the choice? Really? I stepped closer, emboldened by months of these careful negotiations. Or is it just the choice you're willing to see? For a moment, I thought he would retreat behind the cold mask he wore so well. Instead, he surprised me. Perhaps you're right. He moved to the window, looking out at the autumn landscape. I've been considering alternatives. The admission startled me. What kind of alternatives? A different property. Still secure, but less isolated. Closer to the city, to normal life, as you put it. He turned back to me. Not now. After they're born. After we're certain Dmitri is no longer a threat. Have you found him? Pain flickered across Alexei's face. Not yet, but we will. The "we" hung in the air, a reminder of the organization behind him, the power structure I still knew so little about. And when you do, what happens to him? I asked the question that had haunted me since learning the truth. Alexei was silent for a long moment. That depends on him, on whether he comes to his senses. You wouldn't... I couldn't finish the sentence. Kill my own brother? His voice was flat. Is that what you think of me, Emma? That I'm a monster who would murder his own blood? You killed your father, I said quietly. A man who had beaten my mother to death. His eyes hardened. A man who had tormented his children for years. That was justice, not murder. I believed him, which disturbed me more than I wanted to admit. In the months of our strange coexistence, I'd come to see the code Alexei lived by. Rigid, uncompromising, but not without its own twisted honor. Dmitri betrayed me, he continued. Used you, endangered his own children to spite me. But he's still my brother, still family. And family is everything, I murmured, echoing what had become his mantra. Yes. He moved closer, stopping just short of touching me. More than you know. Something in his tone made my breath catch. There was a heat in his eyes I'd seen flickering over the past weeks, growing stronger, harder to ignore. Alexei, I began, not sure what I intended to say. His phone rang, shattering the moment. His expression closed off as he glanced at the screen. I need to take this. He stepped back, professional mask sliding into place. We'll continue this conversation later. I nodded, retreating from his study, relieved and disappointed in equal measure. The complexity of my feelings toward Alexei Volkov was becoming harder to deny. Stockholm Syndrome, I told myself. Nothing more than the psychological response of a captive toward her captor. But in my quieter moments, I knew it was more complicated than that. That evening, instead of our usual dinner, Alexei surprised me by suggesting a walk in the gardens. The weather is mild, he said. Dr. Myers recommended fresh air and gentle exercise. The gardens were beautiful in the fading light, the setting sun casting golden light through autumn leaves. We walked in companionable silence along gravel paths that wound between carefully tended beds and ancient trees. For the first time in months, I felt almost normal, a woman walking with a man in a garden at sunset, not a prisoner with her jailer. I've been thinking about what you said, Alexei spoke finally. About after. I glanced at him, noting how the sunset softened his usually severe features. And? You're right. This isn't a sustainable situation. He stopped near a stone bench, indicating for me to sit. The children will need more than I initially planned. I lowered myself onto the bench, grateful for the rest. What are you suggesting? A compromise. He remained standing, hands clasped behind his back. After they're born, after we're certain the immediate danger has passed, we move to my property on the coast. It's still private, still secure, but less isolated. There's a small town nearby, other families, eventually schools. We? I caught the pronoun immediately. Yes, Emma, we. His eyes held mine. I won't separate the children from their mother. And I won't abandon my responsibility to protect all of you, so I remain your prisoner, just in a prettier cage. No. He sat beside me, close enough that I could feel the warmth of him in the cooling evening air. Not a prisoner, a partner. The word hung in the air between us, loaded with implications. What does that mean, exactly? Alexei turned to face me fully, his expression more open than I'd ever seen it. It means we raise them together, protect them together, build a life that keeps them safe, but gives them the normalcy you value. As what? Co-parents? Reluctant allies? As whatever we become to each other. His hand found mine on the bench, his fingers warm against my skin. These past months, they've changed things between us. You must feel it too. I should have pulled away, should have rejected the very suggestion. Instead, I found myself turning my palm up, allowing our fingers to intertwine. I don't know what I feel anymore, I admitted. Everything's so confused. You kidnapped me, Alexei, held me prisoner, and protected you. He corrected gently. From the beginning, that was my only intention. And now? His eyes dropped to my lips, then back to meet my gaze. Now I want more than your safety. I want your trust, your companionship. His voice dropped lower. Your choice. What if my choice is to leave? To take the twins and disappear? Pain flickered across his face. Is that what you want? The question forced me to confront feelings I'd been avoiding for weeks. Did I want to leave? The Alexei I'd come to know was complex, damaged, capable of both terrifying coldness and surprising tenderness. He was possessive, controlling, dangerous to his enemies. But to those he considered family, and I was undeniably that now, he was fiercely protective, unfailingly generous, even gentle in his way. I don't know, I answered honestly, but I want the freedom to decide. Then have it. His words surprised me. When the babies are born, when we know they're healthy and safe, you'll have your choice. Stay with me. Build this life together. Or go. With my support and protection from a distance, you'd let me leave? If that's what you truly want. His eyes held mine, intense and sincere, but I hope you'll choose to stay. The confession hung in the autumn air between us. In that moment, with the setting sun painting everything in gold and his hand warm against mine, I could almost imagine choosing him. Choosing this complicated, dangerous man who had kidnapped me to protect his brother's unborn children, and somewhere along the way had begun to care for their mother too. I don't have to decide now, I said finally. No. He lifted our joined hands, pressing a kiss to my knuckles that sent an unexpected shiver through me. But when you do decide, Emma, I want it to be a real choice, not made from fear or necessity. The months of captivity, of careful negotiation, had led to this strange moment of honest connection. Whatever came next, whether I ultimately chose freedom or this complex man who offered security wrapped in golden chains, I knew my life and my children's lives were irrevocably entwined with Alexei Volkov's. And the most surprising realization of all was that I no longer entirely regretted the mistaken text that had brought him into my life.